Welcome to Regulatory Ramblings. Our podcast today is brought to you by the University of Hong Kong's RegTech Lab, the HKU SEF FinTech Academy, the Asia Global Institute, and the HKU edX Professional Certificate in FinTech, with support from the university's Faculty of Law. I'm your host, Ajay Shamdasani. In today's Spotlight segment, we'll be speaking with a returning guest and dear friend of the program in HKU Law School, Marc Steinberg of the Dedman School of Law at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. He's a leading expert and prolific scholar in the field of securities and corporate law, and his new book, entitled Director and Officer Liability, Discretionaries, Not Fiduciaries, was released by Oxford University Press in mid-June. In his book, he reframes the role of corporate officers and directors as discretionaries rather than fiduciaries. Following our chat with Professor Steinberg, we'll dive into a discussion on the creation of the Women in Artificial Intelligence group, created by Tram and Nguyen, herself a co-founder of the London-based Center for Finance, Technology and Entrepreneurship, better known by its acronym, CFTE. But first, a little bit about Professor Steinberg's new book. According to its description, quote, "For centuries, directors and officers have been identified as fiduciaries, bearing a legal and ethical duty to act in the best interests of those they represent. However, the liability standards that ordinarily exist are too lenient to be characterized as fiduciary. Misrepresentation is detrimental to the rule of law, contravenes reasonable investor expectations, and impairs the integrity of the financial markets." Marc, thank you so much for joining us.
Delighted to be here. Thank you, AJ.
You know, you've been such a prolific author in the field of securities law scholarship, having authored approximately 150 law review articles and 45 books. I mean, you would be the person to speak to. But first, tell me, what prompted you to write your book, especially now?
Sure. I think what prompted it is that I've been at this a long time, as you said. Been teaching since the mid-1980s at the SEC. Before that, and of course, directors and officers are identified as fiduciaries. One thinks of fiduciary as owing a duty of due care, acting in good faith, and having a duty of loyalty to whom that fiduciary duty is owed. And as the law progressed during the last 4 decades or so, it became clear to me that simply this label of fiduciary was not accurate. And I knew it was not accurate, but yet, of course, that label persists. And finally, a few years ago, after a number of other decisions, basically not holding directors liable for conduct that would not be acceptable in other areas, I said, enough is enough. I think that this really mischaracterizes the situation, presents a false portrayal. And then I sought to figure out a way to communicate this in a way that would be persuasive, yet not unduly critical of the way that directors and officers are held accountable.
What would you say you're advocating, and what policy outcomes would you like?
Well, let me just give some examples. The duty of care. Duty of care in any other situation, you're driving your automobile, you're an attorney representing a client, you'd have the obligation to exercise that degree of care that a person in like circumstances would be held accountable to. A duty that a reasonable such person would engage in. In U.S. corporate law, to hold one liable for the duty of care, gross negligence has to be shown. Gross negligence in many states in the U.S., for example, if not all, is the type of conduct that would be held to be subject to punitive damages. That's how unacceptable it is. It's basically a gross neglect for the welfare of others. And that's what must be shown to breach the duty of care. And this goes on to the business judgment rule, where that is one of the preeminent principles of U.S. company law has been adopted in many countries in the world, not perhaps under that terminology, but is an accepted doctrine in many countries in the world. And that is, again, that if one acts without a disabling conflict of interest, one acts with what is called the requisite information before him or her, and that decision is rational, then the general framework is, with respect to that decision, is that it's not subject to challenge unless, again, gross negligence is shown. And I think this was best said a year or two ago in a decision by Vice Chancellor Laster of the Delaware Court of Chancery, where he said that it is easier for a prosecutor to obtain a criminal conviction for negligence in a criminal case than it is for a shareholder to rebut the presumption of the business judgment rule. So therefore, it's easier for one to go to prison than it is for a director to be held accountable under the business judgment rule.
Oh, completely. I mean, it's. I just wanted to quickly say, the invoking the business judgment rule has long been seen as a get out of jail card for a lot of companies.
Well, again, it's a gross negligence level, but the U.S. company law statutes go much farther, because that was deemed to be not sufficient. And now there are exculpation statutes, which some are self-enabling in some of these states where does not have to be an amendment to the articles. For example, in Texas, in legislation that was just passed last month with respect to publicly traded companies, the Texas statute is self-enabling. There's no need to amend the articles. In a state like Delaware, there is a need to amend the articles. And they vary in the extent of leniency. I'll go with Delaware, and then I'll go to Texas and Nevada. Delaware, if one acts without a breach of the duty of loyalty and acts without intentional misconduct, then the person's not liable. Or to put it another way, under the Delaware exculpation statute, which has been adopted in many states, in addition to Delaware, in order to hold a director liable, one must prove that the director breached his or her duty of loyalty or acted with intentional misconduct. So again, this basically makes the business judgment rule, when there's an exculpation statute, when there's not a breach of the duty of loyalty, to hold a director liable for monetary damages, one has to show that the director engaged in intentional misconduct. Recklessness is not even enough. Texas, Nevada, and a number of other states, including the Model Business Corporation Act that has been adopted in several states, they go much further. The Texas statute, for example, in order to hold a director liable, one must show that the director and officer, this goes to officers as well, that the director or officer not only breached his or her fiduciary duty, but that he or she did so with fraud, intentional misconduct, or a knowing violation of law. So imagine that a director can engage in a breach of the duty of loyalty, take a corporate opportunity, engage in a director self-dealing transaction, financially benefits at the expense of the corporation, and that director can only be held liable in recognizing that there's an improper gain there. So it is proven there's an improper gain. The director can only be held liable if the plaintiff, in addition, shows that that breach was intentional, it was fraudulent, or it was a knowing violation of the law. So simply put, that is not, AJ, a fiduciary standard. And then to go further, Delaware and somewhere around 15 or 16 other states have adopted statutes that permit a board of directors, by means of a board resolution, to permit directors, officers, and others to take corporate opportunities that would otherwise belong to the corporation. So that, for example, a Delaware corporation, its board could adopt a resolution permitting its outside directors to take corporate opportunities that belong to the corporation and take those opportunities for those directors' personal financial benefit. Whether that is a good statute or a bad statute to induce outside directors to serve on corporate boards is another issue. The issue here is that is not a fiduciary standard. So there are several examples right there, AJ, and my book describes many more, analyzes many more, why identifying directors and officers as fiduciaries is a mischaracterization. It does disservice to the law, and it presents a false portrayal. Furthermore, reasonable uninitiated investors, a lot of retail investors, they hear that directors and officers are fiduciaries. They justifiably believe that these individuals owe substantive obligations, meaningful obligations. And in fact, this is not
Right.
true.
That's the conventional wisdom. That's the
Yes,
conventional
and
wisdom.
this is simply not true when it comes to liability standards. Now, you read some of these decisions, or many of these decisions, in fact, and you see this very flowery language about very heightened fiduciary duties. Those are standards of conduct. In other words, you see this language, this jargon in cases, and this language goes to what directors are expected to do, or what they ought to do, or what are deemed to be best practices. All of that is well and good, but when basically the situation comes to substantive meaning, what are the standards in which these directors and officers are held accountable, financially accountable? What we have are standards that are often devoid of fiduciary status. Sometimes, once in a while, there are fiduciary standards. If you do have an interested director transaction, which is not approved by disinterested directors, which is not approved by independent shareholders, then you do have a standard that's fiduciary like, that the director must show that the transaction is entirely fair. That's a fiduciary standard. So so the law sometimes does apply a fiduciary standards. Far more frequently, that liability standard uh, is devoid of fiduciary standards, and that's what prompted me to write this book. That I want to get this loud and clear, and I wanted to create a term that was neutral. I thought it was important that the term that I come up with is a neutral term, and in fact, this term is not even in the English dictionary as we speak today to mean what it does. And what I thought was directors and officers have discretion when it comes to their business decisions. And the amount of that their discretion that is afforded is sometimes very broad and sometimes fiduciary like. So therefore, they're discretionaries. That is, they're given amount of discretion. Sometimes that discretion is very highly protected. Sometimes it's fiduciary in nature. So calling them fiduciaries is an accurate description. It's a neutral description of identifying corporate directors and officers in the role that they actually play when it comes to with respect to their liability standard. And of course, that's the standard that matters when there's misconduct that occurs. What is the type of conduct to which a corporate director and officer is going to be held accountable when there's liability at issue?
You and I are legally trained. We know more than the you certainly more so than myself know more than the average person about corporate and securities regulation. So why reframe the role of corporate directors and officers as discretionaries rather than fiduciaries? What purpose does it serve, and how does it change the legal analysis and consequently their responsibilities and liability?
I think what we're dealing with is a mischaracterization of what the law is. The law, simple precept, I think, in all jurisdictions that consider the development of the law important, the rule of law important, is that the law should be truthful. And and the law is not truthful here. In other words, the law should be truthful. It should set forth what the situation is. The law, when we're talking about liability with respect to directors and officers, is not truthful. To me, that is very important. Plus, a legal term should have as its characteristics those elements that are truthful to that term. when one thinks of a fiduciary, the characteristics of that term are basically due care, good faith, and loyalty. This is not the way it is frequently with respect to director and officer liability. So, therefore, it presents a false portrayal. In addition, it is simply wrong to mislead reasonable individuals. And calling directors and officers fiduciaries with these types of lax liability standards that often are applied is a misrepresentation. And this misrepresentation, I think, is contrary to the best interests of the financial markets, because after all, retail investors play a key role in the financial markets. And it is also a mischaracterization with respect to the importance of legal terms, especially legal terms that have a set definition, which are being misapplied. And here it is a false portrayal. It is contrary to the rule of law. And that's why this book is important. And I might add, I'm very pleased that two former Delaware Chief Supreme Court justices have given very positive endorsements of the book. A sitting current Vice Chancellor of the Delaware Court of Chancery, Vice Chancellor Laster, has as well. Preeminent law professors in our field globally have endorsed the book very strongly, including, for example, Professor Phyllis Stefik at Cambridge, Professor Theo Hans at the National University of Singapore, Professor Steve Bainbridge at UCLA, Professor Jonathan Macy at Yale, Professor Todd Henderson at the University of Chicago, and leading practitioners, including, for example, Edward Herlihy, who was a managing partner and is still a partner at the Wachtell Lipton firm, perhaps, well, clearly one of the premier U.S. law firms, some of whom view this law firm as the premier U.S. law firm insofar as counseling corporate boards in the United States, as well as by the investor bar. For example, Paul Geller from Robbins Geller, that firm was lead counsel in the Enron litigation. So this book has received endorsements, I'm happy to say, from judges, from practitioners, from leading academics globally, and it is doing very well on both the Oxford and Amazon sites, from what I gather. So I'm very pleased about this. So it is having an impact, and it's just a month old. So I'm hoping that this book will create a lot of noise and correct this misnomer. Correct this misnomer that directors and officers are discretionaries; they're not fiduciaries.
And I think you've done a thoroughgoing, masterful job, and I would implore anyone to pick this up because you do cover a wide range of issues, including the duty of care, the business judgment rules we discuss, exculpation statutes, the duty of good faith, interested director transactions, derivative litigation, mergers and acquisitions, and closely held corporations. So, with that, any closing remarks?
I'm really happy with this book. Like my previous book, Rethinking Securities Law, I thought it was important that I look at the U.S. securities laws, and thank you for having me on this program with respect to that book, which was awarded by a reputable American Book Fest as the best law book in the United States for 2021. And hopefully this book will win some awards as well. I sure hope so, of course. Uh, and I thought it was important to look at the U.S. securities laws, set forth what they were, what was wrong with them, and then make recommendations. Not surprisingly, that those recommendations have not had much of an impact as we speak. After all, in order for massive change to occur, there must be some sort of massive scandal or some other developments that prompt that to occur, such as what happened with Enron, the financial crisis, and so on. And fortunately, that those type of crises have not occurred. So that's good in a way. Here, I really felt that something had to be said, and I'm glad that I'm the one that been able to do it. That when we talk about director and officer liability, these individuals, and I'm not being critical of directors and officers liability. I'm not being critical of directors and officers. Uh, for the most part, these are very competent, intelligent individuals who act with integrity. So I by no means am critical of directors and officers. They play important roles, and the role of the outside independent director is very important. And these individuals, again, for the most part, they're competent, they work hard, they have integrity. And that way, perhaps these lax liability standards at times, they make good policy, such as the business judgment rule. There's a good argument for that. So I want to make clear that I'm not necessarily critical of the business judgment rule or the duty of care or some of these exculpation statutes. The point is, though, is that when these types of statutes apply, when these types of lax liability standards apply, these individuals are not treated as fiduciaries. They may be well meaning. There are standards of conduct that describe best practices, which in many cases these individuals achieve. But when they do not, and when there are actions that are being perpetrated and there are challenges, the liability standards, far more frequently than not, are absent, are devoid of fiduciary substance. And therefore, these individuals should not be called fiduciaries. They are, in fact, discretionaries.
Mr. Marc Steinberg, thank you so much for your time, and please do come back again.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. We're now going to discuss the creation of a relatively new group called the Global Women in AI, with the group's chairwoman, Tram Nguyen. The group is a global community empowering women to shape the future of artificial intelligence. Its mission is to equip women across industries with the skills, networks, and visibility they need to thrive in an AI-driven world. From aspiring professionals to seasoned leaders, the GWAI connects a diverse network of innovators, learners, and changemakers. The group offers hands-on learning experience, leadership development, mentorship opportunities, and access to global forums, all with the design of helping women lead with purpose, power, and passion. Backed by the London-based Center for Finance, Technology, and Entrepreneurship, or CFTE as it's better known, global education platform in digital finance, which Tramon is a co-founder of, the GWAI is where inspiration meets action, creating pathways for women to lead in AI together. But first, a little bit about Tramon herself. Before launching the CFTE in 2017 with her partner, Nguyen in 2017, she spent nearly 2 decades with Standard Chartered Bank in New York, Dresdner Kleinworth, and UBS Wealth Management in London, advising ultra-high net worth clients and family offices. A recognized voice for the future of work, she partners with governments, central banks, and Tier 1 institutions worldwide to deliver large-scale reskilling programs. She has co-authored the world's largest fintech jobs report and is the founder of the Future Skills Forum. Under her leadership, the forum is positioned as the global convener of thought leaders, policymakers, educators, and industry innovators to drive forward the agenda of human capital transformation in the age of AI. A champion of lifelong learning in digital finance, she works closely with governments, regulators, and financial institutions to build future-ready workforces. She leads initiatives that bring industry and public sector stakeholders together to design large-scale education strategies, develop forward-looking curricula, and ensure the financial sector is equipped to thrive in an AI-driven economy. For example, under her leadership, the CFTE has expanded its impact globally, educating over 260,000 alumni in 130 plus countries, collaborating with over 1,000 industry experts to accelerate the transformation of finance through education. And with that, let me turn over to her. Tram, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Audrey, and it's a great pleasure to join your podcast, and thanks a lot for having me.
I've given your bio, a summary of your bio, but I guess that there's always the little bits and pieces that biographies don't always capture. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Add some color. Where are you from? What's your background? How did it put you on the path that you're on, which is the intersection between finance and technology and skills we all need to have? But what put you on that path?
So I grew up in Paris. So my childhood was in France, but I'm also of Vietnamese of origin. So embracing both culture deeply since childhood until, let's say, today. I studied in Paris, did a preparation of Hautes Écoles de Commerce in Paris, joined a business school in France. Then for my last year, I decided to specialize myself in finance and in London. So this is where I started my first, let's say, work experience in London on the trading floor. And then I started my first job was in New York, where I was, as you said, in capital markets and trading for Standard Chartered. And if I may, I was perhaps the first few female capital markets trader back then at Standard Chartered in New York back in the early 2000s. And then after a couple of years on the capital market side, where I was running some of the largest books of non-deliverable forwards, really highly regulated currencies, working with central banks and regulators and a lot of the banks and financial institutions, I decided to move back to London and made my first, let's say, Swift, where I switched to private banking, where I became not a capital market trader, but I went into wealth management and worked for UBS private banking, where I was advising some of the largest clients and families of UBS out of London for numbers of years. But at that time, I was also very, uh, let's say, I saw that big um, fintech ecosystem in the UK at that time, 10 years ago, was the second largest in the world, where a lot of fintech company were setting up. And I had the chance, to be surrounded with some of the prominent entrepreneurs of this world in fintech. And for me, I really saw that big gap, which is people like myself. So I became an entrepreneur after 16 years into traditional finance. I set up and work with a lot of people that are whether running in a bank or fintech company or payment company, the entrepreneurs of this world with regulators and academia. And I saw that big problem and the gap where people like myself didn't have the right knowledge or skills, and that big vision to empower people with the knowledge and mindset for them to thrive in this new world of digital finance, and not just to survive change, but to lead it around the world. And so that's why we decided to launch with my partner, this educational platform to really help people to get the most relevance and actionable knowledge, so that we serve learners now in more than 130 countries, working with financial institutions, governments, startup, and universities to provide what we call education at scale. So it makes me proud that we're just not building skills, but we're building confidence in the workforce, in making sure that people can really, wherever they are, can get really good knowledge from the industry for the industry. And our learners are now in over 130 countries. So very much democratization of knowledge to everyone, making sure that people can learn because, without, the proper industry knowledge and the ability to basically after that to connect with the industry in a very fast way, you wouldn't be able to thrive. And so so for me, I've met mothers re-entering the workforce, women bankers pivoting into tech, and female students in emerging markets who now lead innovation project at major institution. So for me, I was adamant since day one, because I knew when I started traditional finance, being on the trading floor or even in wealth management, there were very few women leading that space. And so when I set up CFT, it was a place that I wanted to become a place where you can do whatever you like if you have the right knowledge and skills. And so for me, it was really important from day one. So it's been now 8.5 years or almost 9 years, building a much more inclusive, human-centered financial ecosystem. And I really firmly believe that emerging technology and innovation are giving birth to a new area of finance that can really positively impact billions of people around the world. And so we need for that a global diverse learner from tech, bank, startup, from graduate to board level professionals. So really, really diverse in terms of the people we serve, but also not only gender. Gender is really, really important to me. And I'll tell you more later why. But for me also diversity of views from tech to startup to policy to bank and academia.
The remainder of the century is going to be characterized by, and I'm not saying anything others haven't already said, but more eloquently, but that being a lifelong learner is a given, because all too quickly skills and knowledge and even attitudes can become ossified. But I guess what I'm wondering is why the compelling urge to create the Global Women in AI, and why now?
So I fully agree with you on this importance of lifelong learning. We need to make sure that whatever, and I'm a lifelong learner myself, making sure that because the speed of happening in the industry is moving so fast, sometimes I feel that it's really hard for anyone to really be abreast of the current trends, the current updates, etc. So it's that's what you are doing as well, with the FinTech Hong Kong University and ourselves, is really make sure that everyone can have access to the latest updates. And this is something we need to encourage people to do. And especially, and so why suddenly I decided to launch, to your point, Global Women in AI, and why now, when there seem to be similar bodies already in existence. Since CFT started, so now it's been, as I said, almost 9 years, I was extremely adamant to encourage women to learn and to grow. And so we've launched, hundreds of courses, and for women at organization level or government level with scholarship, wanted to always drive that diversity and inclusion to the workforce. At some point at CFT, we had 40% of our learners were women. And in some region, today, 90% of our learners are women, especially in the UAE or the Middle East, where they're making a big focus on enabling women to learn in pretty much anything with regards to digital finance. Could be fintech, it could be blockchain, digital assets, sustainability, and entrepreneurship. But with AI, we are touching a turning point. And why now I'm spending so much time building Global Women in AI, and all my effort and my energy is to it, is because I believe that this is a big problem we're facing today. And the problem we're facing today is that there's definitely, and I always highlight, the lack of diverse voices in shaping the future of technology. It's even more important today as AI is really not stopping, is really getting into every industry and shaping every field of work. The field of AI and data science have grown exponentially as the world is increasingly being built from automated system and smart machine. But yet, the people whose work underpin this are far from representative of the society these systems are meant to serve. So AI become ubiquitous in every life, and the drive for diversity and inclusion in technology is of a pressing concern. Do you know that only today, if you look in terms of the underrepresentation of women are really and marginalized group in data science and AI, there's including gender data gaps leads to the encoding and amplification of bias in technical products or algorithmic system creating harmful feedback loops, is really crucial that we get ahead of this now, before there's flawed technologies become something we can't reverse, and it's the fabric of our societies, the way that we're shaping our workforce, and it's very complex challenges. And I'll tell you three things that for me it's really adamant we need to address. Is that if you look at the mapping of the participation of women in data science and AI, let's put, I'll give the example in the UK where I sit. So I'm in London, and globally, today, women make up half of the UK population, but only 22% of AI and data professionals and 18% of users across the largest online global data science platform. So our aim is to increase the number of women in this field. We cannot get only men uh, building those LLM. We need the voice of women. Otherwise, as I said, we're going to have a big problem to get only one lens, and we need to be much more diverse. When it comes to investigating diversity and inclusion in online and physical workplace cultures, I think we're having some problem also in tech companies or institutions that have a very structural divergence in women's and men's career trajectories. A lot of women today are feeling really hard, and because of the AI increase into the work, into some of the project that being done at very large scale, women are not part of the table, and just because they are not educated in AI or they have not done it, but that doesn't mean we need to make sure that they have a representation, and women are part of the table and sitting at the table and having their voice and decision and part of the decision making. So exploring now how the gender gap shapes scientific knowledge and technical innovation, really important. And so that's why GWAI could be an effort to change this, particularly at the intersection of AI, ethics, and global policy, where GWAI, the Global Women in AI, which I lead, will involve policymakers, public and private sectors, women, and also the voice of women as policymakers, women that are doing things in AI, in banks, in startup, in tech, in academia, just making sure that everyone is represented and women can be heard and lead the space to make a big transformation in any field. And again, I said it's in finance, in healthcare, in investment, startup, policy. So I try to include all the industry that AI is already making a big progression. But also, what I want to highlight is that we will make sure, and I would love, to welcome, FinTech Hong Kong U to help and support us, but we'll make sure that even the young graduates at university level can also be connected to that platform, because it's really difficult for the young generation to have role models into AI. And sometimes they're so afraid of what AI can do and what are the landscape for job opportunities, or even any project that can give them, aspiration. I will make sure that they'll have this opportunity to learn much more about role models and how they have achieved of where they are, knowing that I'm telling you, some of them have never learned about in AI or coding, but they have done really well in the industry, and throughout their journey, now they're leading some of the most prominent projects in AI. So really, that's about Global Women in AI, making sure that it's a mission in its collaboration with schools and universities around the world, by partnering between a lot of different emerging AI technologies and educational sector, and to promote AI literacy among students, but also ensuring that women are at the forefront of shaping the future of AI.
Certainly by this point, women have made great strides ahead in the worlds of banking and finance and law and medicine, and certainly in the corporate world, they've attained many high positions. We've seen places like Hong Kong and Singapore. But the critique is what can be done to get more women into the STEM fields such that they can contribute to the development of AI and Web3 writ large. I mean, some would say it's self-selecting, that those that are willing to devote their lives to something and focus on it and really bear down, they will be attracted to that field. And in often cases, that may be antisocial men, whereas women may choose to live more enriched lives.
Yes, no, I think what more can be done to get more women into STEM field, such that they can contribute to the development of AI, or you said it, Web3. I think the question is what might be holding professionals and women back from adopting AI. I think
And
many
and that's
professionals,
that's another thing I've often found, that women, forgive me for interrupting. I've often
yeah.
found women working in the field of AI. Many
Mm,
of them come from, we've had them on our show. They come from business backgrounds. They're not necessarily
good.
techies or coders, but they somehow managed to find a way into that field.
You so right. I know so many incredible women today, and they have been part of the CFTE ecosystem for years and years, who have done incredibly well. But when you look at their background, they're not tech, they're not geeks, they're just really good in their field, in banking, in finance, in payments, or and they are entrepreneurs or even law. But they have navigated their journey by being really plugged in the ecosystem. They have learned, throughout, lifelong learn, throughout learning by doing, and with their really good understanding of what they do, by adding their knowledge, expertise, plus digital skills and understanding of AI, not necessarily how to create AI, but the use of the application of AI, combining the two. Now, today, they are leading some really good, let's say, they are now leading some of the at government level, or even leading some of the main startup that I know, or even leading a bank. There are numerous huge number of case studies and very good inspiring model. But the reality is that they have done it the past, let's say, less than the past 10 years. They have just been into it, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. For me, what's holding back is because many professional, they think, and they've been in traditional role, don't fully understand how AI works, and so, or they don't know how they can apply it to their specific role. So people, may see AI as too complex, too technical, even sometimes threatening. So for me, we talk about upskilling, but my view is that we have to move away from that. It's about upskilling so much as achieving AI readiness and understanding, how AI can apply to your day-to-day role to help the person, to really start their journey. So we need to encourage, so hold hands a bit, and creating that soft and safe environment and ecosystem to allow, all the more, like, let's say, more women to get into the STEM field. And I would say, for me, it doesn't depend on your seniority, your age, or your function. You can really start getting into AI at any age, whether you are a young professional who are who wants to start, and there's lots of role, and actually the data shows that there's a lack of talent in AI. So I would encourage women, to really get into understanding what's happening in the industry, connect with those who has done this journey. And for those who have already experience in any field that they have, and they need to have a very deep domain expertise. But if you have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, I think it will be less it would be perhaps easier for you to get very quickly those knowledge in AI, future proof yourself. Have we have even developed our own AIQ assessment, which is a free assessment to help people to understand where they are in their AI journey. And based on this AI journey, then after that, start learning, start connecting with the industry, and see how, people has been transforming, themselves into, and then after that, start, getting more and more women to have a voice and place to lead with AI. But for me, incorporate STEM in early curricula. So this is what I'm trying to achieve here by connecting with a lot of different schools and universities around the world to make sure that schools are incorporating AI to the curriculum at a very young age, where they're deciding into their career. So 17 plus, 17-year-old. So working with some of them already to really give them an edge, so that they have aligned and an experience in AI since very early on, and then after that, make sure that we have, and this is what GWAI is about, a place where visible, we can highlight some women pioneer in AI, blockchain, and other STEM field, so that they can break down the unconscious bias and show that it's actually possible for you to get into the field. And what I would like to add is that we need to change the way that we are learning. So for me, I'm trying to really make more like an inclusive learning environment, where teaching methods and curricula should be much more inclusive and avoid those reinforcing stereotype where women are not tech savvy, they don't like to play with AI, etc. I think it's really the opposite. When I look at the women, in for example, in the UAE at the moment, or in the Middle East, where 90% of my learners are women, actually they are learning and they love playing. So we are now changing the way to learn, where we incorporate gamification. So gamification helps, to reinforce the learning by gaining points, by getting, different grade, level bronze, level silver to gold, getting some tokens, so that, we really encourage and give another incentivize, the people, the women, to get some points, so that they can learn, and then after that they can be mentored. So all of these help to bring, hopefully, much more women into the field. So trying to really to disrupt and reinvent the education system for adults.
Your point about uncontrolled bias is well taken, but I know that, for example, in Dubai, when you're applying for something, job, educational position, what have you, fellowship, scholarship, they want to see photos. So right there, bias is injected into the process. Now, when there were many famous orchestras around the world, the way they decided to cut bias, because the feeling was many women weren't being given a fair shot, was they had a screen, and the candidate performed, and only when the marks were tallied did you lower the screen, so you could see who was performing. Now that's a clever way around it. But I want to go back to the global women in AI, and as we look towards the future, where do you see it going? And what can you tell us about its existing projects and initiatives that you'd like to showcase?
I think for me, it's a very much making sure that we can democratize access to the future technology. From the beginning of what I always set up and launch, it was really clear with CFT that I clearly prioritize inclusive access to education in finance and technology and AI. And through, for me, removing barriers related to cost, class, and background, anyone should be able to access knowledge today, creating much more learning opportunities for individuals from totally diverse educational, professional, and social standing. Promoting global learning experiences. As I mentioned, we put a lot of focus on skills framework and assessment of skills to make sure that anyone can assess where they are, and then based on where they are at their level, they should be able to know and reevaluate themselves with learning pathways, so that at the end of their learning journey, they can reach at a very, very high standard of the understanding of AI. So with that ability to assess and then provide learning pathways for any individual and for women, I want everyone to be able to say, I can do it, because this is now personalized to me. It's not coded to anyone. You can be, a young graduate to a mid-career professional to a senior person, because in some countries I work with, it's an aging population. And if you are at 60 or 70-year-old and you still have to go to work because you want to work, it's a possibility. So for me, Global Women in AI would be a safe environment where wherever you are, background, age, seniority, etc., you can really start learning and connecting yourself with industry people that can help you, mentor you. Maybe some of them, I would love to see, some of them becoming like me, an entrepreneur. And I was not born entrepreneur. It's hard to be an entrepreneur, but because I was lucky enough to be surrounded with amazing entrepreneurs that mentor me and supported me, I want to give back with GWAI. So you could be a woman and you could have your own skills, and it's challenging, but you can find your place where you can connect with a lot of different people that perhaps have the knowledge that you don't have, and perhaps you can build something. I think with AI, and this is what excites me the most, I'm really, really bullish with technology and AI, of course, and that's what GWAI is about. I don't know if I mentioned, but CFT and we we have launched an AIification of talent, a white paper based after on the AIification of jobs, where we have identified 3 trends that may happen for an impact on job to the society. The first trend is, with all the different framework, it's mass displacement. There will have a huge number of people who might be displaced because of AI. And that is something we need to identify. Who are the type of people who might be displaced because of AI? My first point I wanted to say with GWAI is that what I'm building, it's something that I really want to help and support women by bridging a lot of different people from every sector, from every age, from around the world, so that people can really feel safe to do things. And perhaps, having my dream would be to help women to become more entrepreneur. And I think that's my point about, today with AI, you can really create a very good startup in a very short period of time and do it in a very fast way with not necessarily a lot of people, but you can do with, let's say, 100 million even revenue. We have many, many examples for the past 2 years in the Silicon Valley, and it can happen also to anyone, in Asia or Europe and Middle East, everywhere, that leverage AI to create things that have a big impact. I think today that's this possibility. If you take the project and you have something really, really nice and cool, to do, let's do it, because AI today allows you to do that in a much faster way and a cheap way. The technology used to be really, really expensive. Now it's affordable. So that's what GWAI is about. It's about creating that hub.
That's a key point, because I remember saying to us several months back that the thing about the AIification of jobs is, on an average day, the average person is just average. But the learning curve for AI is much shorter. And AI gets it wrong for sure from time to time. Not frequently, but more often than not, AI is giving us better than average results.
Yes.
In such an environment, are we looking at wide-scale unemployment and social upheaval?
My view is that there's 3 trends that I see. And the 3 trends that I see is that mass displacement. I mean, I have to say it, otherwise, I wouldn't. I'm quite optimistic, but in the other hand, I'm also, for the first time in a long, long time, I see a big, big, big problem of knowledge gap, and it's just increasing a lot because ChatGPT has now made one of the fastest growing AI application reach millions and millions and billions of users in a very short period of time, and now the impact of job is is even more crucial, because some organization, and we're seeing it already as an invisible trend, they rather use AI than hiring or upskill their own people. So what should we do? We just need to make sure that we identify those people and we supercharge them. So what does it mean, supercharge them? And that is the solution to the mass displacement, is making sure that people have the right foundational AI literacy, foundational knowledge of AI concept, what it is, how it works, understanding all about machine learning, data processing, algorithmic decision making, and learning all these patterns in a very, very, let's say, easy way to digest. But you need to understand what is the AI concept. You need to start also understanding the proficiency in AI technology, like similar to how digital literacy involves using all these online tools. AI literacy require practical skills in what is the AI-driven application, understanding how it works and all the tools. It's like you using Excel. When I was a trader, I use Excel to analyze, all my data so that I make better judgment to put my trade. AI
Right.
will
And
only
that was the state of the art back then, but now it's
exactly.
it's quaint. It's quaint.
Exactly. So it should be something you can't invent, but learn how to use it. And there's thousands of different tools, but I'm not asking you to know all these AI tools, but identify with your domain of expertise which one are the 5 most relevant one, so that you can really try to evaluate after that the AI output, responsible use of AI, making sure that you're using it in an ethical way, with societal implication, with data privacy, transparency. You know this. We need to make sure that we can use AI in a very responsible manner. And then
So be a power user.
yes, exactly. And then after that, you and me agree, it's continuous learning. We cannot stop. That's the problem. We need to make sure that we keep learning, but we adopt this mindset of continuous learning. So being a lifelong learner. But with all of this in shape, I really believe that we can really create some brilliant workforce that can really do well, because AI is a powerful technology that will enable you to augment your productivity and efficiency, but also your creativity part. I really believe it, because I'm much more creative now. I can do marketing on my own. I can do a lot of things, on my own. But before, it would require me so much time. But today, I'm happy to basically myself to develop other type of skills that, I can do a video that before, I would have been required, a lot of other things on my side. But now with the tools, it is just make my life much, much easier. And so as an entrepreneur, it's much to do things much faster and quicker.
If we go back in time to 2017, and in retrospect, I mean, from its inception, right from the beginning, CFTE has been concerned about inclusive education, that those that want to master the vital technologies of tomorrow should be able to do so, without regard to the barriers of caste or socioeconomic class or their current educational, professional, or social standing. That was, and so it makes sense then that the creation of the global women in AI was part of that larger long-term goal. That dovetails nicely with your larger plans for CFTE. So you co-founded CFTE. What are your impressions on how far it's come and how receptive people are to your message and mission? Because I mean, I remember being at your event at the Museum of the Future in Dubai last year, and you had people, a large contingent from Hong Kong, you had people from Singapore there, you had a lot of people from Saudi, and a lot of people, prominent movers and shakers locally from government and industry and the royal family. Um, you've done well. I mean, I guess what one might say, what's left to achieve?
Oh, you are so kind, Audrey. It's really kind of you to say it. But I think my work has, as I said, to always There's still so much that needs to be done, to be honest with you. Of course, the adoption, and when we started 8 years ago, first the adoption of and the concept of lifelong learning was not even in the mind of people at government level, or even at the bank or in the individual. For them, they were very traditional learner. They learn once and then perhaps learn a little bit if they lose their job or if they think, there's something, but it was not embedded part of, their social life to go and learn or to learn on a continuous basis. And today, after let's say 9 years, I think is getting much, much better in terms of first learning as an adult, because the job of a student is to learn. But the job of an adult, usually when you say I'm going learning, people say, oh, why, But now in certain part of the world where we have the chance to work with at government level, is part of the agenda of citizens when they send, their learner, their professionals to go and learn, and they even reward them. And so this is the case of Singapore, Hong Kong, you mentioned, UAE, Saudi, etc., or Egypt as an example, of course. But those are now really embedded because they have this top-down approach. Now, as an educator, both you and me, we understand is really have to be, how do we stay AI competitive? It's really, really important that anyone should stay competitive in this very competitive environment and very resilient environment where change is needed. You need to have this ability to change. And so for me, I repeat myself, I think, after the conclusion of the Future Skills Forum in the MENA at the Museum of the Future in Dubai that you attended as well, we really wanted to make sure that everyone has a place and sit at the table to speak about how do we empower workforce at every level. Since then, things have changed a lot in a year time, and what we have now really focus our work on is very much build our infrastructure on talent. So when we started back then, 8 years ago, there were no way that we could leverage technology and AI to provide transfer of knowledge and also skills mapping, skills framework, assessment AI skills on a continuously manner, and also learning pathways that are really personalized to your domain of expertise and your seniority. You cannot teach the same way if you are teaching someone at graduate level than if you are teaching someone that at mid-career or senior level in a specific domain of area. Today, thanks to generative AI, you can personalize your learning depending on you and yourself. And this is what CFT is now building, is the infrastructure of talent that creates your own assessment skills on AI. And based on your level, you could be at 60, 70, but then once you have done your learning, throughout 6 months' time, you can already reevaluate yourself and hopefully reach the 80-90% mark that we wish for, and do on a constantly manner. So that is now really, really reinventing lifelong learning and education in AI, using AI to reinforce every citizens and employee to make sure they are relevant and AI ready. So this is what we're doing now, which is really, really different from the previous years, because we're really leveraging AI to really try to transform people. And that's what we are spending most of our time at the moment.
No, it's great that you've got those scores. The metrics, yardsticks, and KPIs are important to let you know how far you've come and how far you have yet to go, and what remedial education you may need to undertake. I think we both are of the view that certainly the tone and tenor of what you said so far would suggest this, but I think we're both of the view that education is important to create more productive workers, to transform human beings so that they can be the best version of themselves. But I don't think the piano has dropped on people. I don't think it's fully occurred to people how important it is for people in all walks of life to start getting educated on AI. And I think maybe when the need becomes more compelling, maybe people will wake up. But that remains to be seen. But as we finish up in our closing moments, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
No, thanks a lot, RJ. First, thanks to you. We have an opportunity, the work that you are doing, bringing more awareness about, opportunities for people to understand, what they could do, etc. So thanks a lot for having me. We will be, so there's two things I would like to invite. First,
Please.
joined anyone, please join the platform of Global Women in AI. It's a platform for everyone to really come and we're building our AI library, which is going to be the most extensive library on AI. Could be use cases of every sector, the new piece of registration, and it's free. It's really much for anyone to keep abreast of the latest trends and the latest innovation and what's happening across the world. That will be, led by industry experts, whether they are, in AI startup to policy to banks, etc. But very inviting everyone to come and get access to this knowledge. There will be, free courses, there will be events. And for that, if I may, RJ, we are organizing the Future Skills Forum in Asia on the 11th of November. I would love to invite you to come because we will continue the discussion about how do we empower workforce even more this time than perhaps a year ago, because now it's just not stopping. And I invite everyone to come and join us for this really, really special and unique moment to go much, much deeper on how AI can really help to find opportunities in terms of jobs and for everyone.
Well, we look forward to it. Tram Nguyen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so, so much for having me. It was a pleasure to join this podcast. Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Until next time.